Scots work that she has worked on in the past, and you are in for a treat. So this is somebody who really knows how this...
I feel that this is being slightly oversold here.
No, not at all. So, without further ado, I shall hand over literally to Rhiannon Purdie.
Oh, I need to wear this as well. It's the first time I've used Mentimeter. That we could speak Gaelic if you happen to be one of the Gaelic-speaking kings. But it doesn't have that same kind of binary, that sort of two ferrets in a sack status with English that it has in Scotland now. You know, it was just Scots. And I think it's really interesting to look at the literature from that period. It's not that poets like Henryson, who I'm going to be talking about today, couldn't read. He was reading Chaucer, but he was reading Chaucer as something written in a language that he knew from another country. So he's reading Chaucer the way we might read American writers now. You know, there isn't that kind of sense of, you know, this is the, you know, really we should all speaking like Americans, that is the proper way to speak. And, you know, we don't, there wasn't that kind of struggle of status between Scots and English in the Middle Ages. So I like to try and teach some of the literature from this period, also because it's great, not many people come across it. I got interested in trying to get it back into schools one year when I was teaching an honours module in Older Scots, and I had a lot of, as unusually actually, I had quite a few Scottish pupils come in, and they'd gone all the way through school in Scotland doing English, doing advanced higher English. Nobody had ever told them about these poets, and they decided collectively that they were outraged that they'd never learned these authors. So this sort of started a campaign. So where I am now is figuring out how to make this accessible in schools. Because if you just pick up a bit of Older Scots writing, the spelling is bizarre. You know, there'll be lots of words that pupils don't know, and it's very off-putting. It's very off-putting for teachers as well. Look at it and think, I'm not going to teach that. I'm going to teach Jackie Kay, thank you very much. I'm going to go for something slightly more familiar. So I've been thinking about a way of making it more accessible. So I've now come up with a kind of a four-stage plan, which I sort of set out on how to approach an Older Scots text. And this is kind of what I'm going to demonstrate to you today. I've got a website up called Read Older Scots.scot, and we're gradually starting to populate it with, we've got a little video up there of the actor Clive Russell declaiming a bit of John Barbour, another fable about a fox, if you're keen on foxes. But this four-stage plan, which I'm going to kind of demonstrate a bit today, is first of all, to just tell the story of the text that you're, you know, the content of the text that you're going to be looking at in Older Scots. On the premise that, you know, it's like when you're learning a foreign language, if you're listening to people talking, if you already know what they're talking about, you've got a much better chance of following the conversation than if you're just dropped in cold and you're trying to guess from scratch. So that's the first stage. Second stage is to listen to the Older Scots without trying to follow it on the page. Just listen and see how much you can pick up once you already know what's happening in the text you're listening to. Third stage, listening to it again, this time reading what I've called modern subtitles. So I've given what I've called subtitles here. It's not a verse translation, but each line is as literal a translation of the Older Scots passage as I can make it, still making sense. And then finally, I get people to listen to the Older Scots while looking at the Older Scots text. Okay, so I'm going to try this out on you now. So if everybody could not look at this pamphlet, close this pamphlet, right? So stage one, I'm just going to tell you the story. This is the tale of the fox and the wolf. One of Henryson's moral fables. Moral fables they're called the Aesop's fables, but actually the fox fables are generally not taken from Aesop at all. They're taken from a sort of European selection of fables about a fox. Usually the fox is called renard. That's where you get the modern French word renard for a fox. But in Scotland, only in Scotland, he's called Lawrence and Lowry. It's Henryson who first calls his fox Lowry, or Lawrence. Scottish writers after that sometimes take it up, possibly because it sounds like the verb to lower, to kind of skulk about. I just like the fact that Scottish fox is called Lawrence. So the tale we've got, The Fox and the Wolf, it immediately follows on a tale called The Cock and the Fox that you might be familiar with, where the fox has been unsuccessful in running off with a cockerel. Right, so he's still hungry. I mean, Lawrence, in all his stories, is starving hungry. You know, his main motivating force is get food. Right, so He's still hungry. He goes and he lies down, and it turns out he's a bit of an astrologer. He looks up at the skies, and he sees his fate written in the stars. And at this point, all Henryson tells us is that he sees Saturn, the planet of major misfortune, moving into the sign of Capricorn, the goat. And then he sees Jupiter, who, among other things, is the planet of justice, moving into the sign of Sagittarius, the archer. Henryson doesn't tell us what this means. It's not very clear if Lawrence knows exactly what this means, but he comes away from the experience of reading the skies thinking, pins Lawrence to the earth with his arrow, and the dying Lawrence says, oh, can it not say anything these days as a joke and not have somebody take it seriously? Goatherd comes along, skins him, goes away with his pelt. So Lawrence pays for his sins after all. Right, so that's our story. Lovely, lovely stories. Try them out in primary school. I mean, they're quite bloody. Okay, now I'm actually just going to read you the first 8 stanzas. Don't look at a text, right? Just see how much you can follow now that you know the story. So we're starting off with our wolf friar taking confession. Art thou contrite and sorry in thy sprite for latest pass?
Na, sir, I canna doubt. Me think that hens are sa honey sweet,
and lamb's flesh that new are let in blood. For to repent, my mind cannot conclude but of this thing, that I have slain so few. Well, quod the wolf, and faith thou art a shrew. Sin thou cannot forthink thy wickedness. Will thou forbear in time to come and mend?
Well, and I forbear. Who shall I leave, alas, having none other craft me to defend? Need causes me to steal wherever I wend.
Shame to think, I cannot work you it, yet will I fain pretend to gentle state. Well, quod the wolf, thou once pointest twa belonging to perfect confession. To the third point of penance let us go. Will thou take pain for thy transgression?
Ah, sir, consider my complexion, sickly in wake, and of my nature tender. Lo, will ye see, I am both lean and slender. Yet, nevertheless, I will swo it were licht, short, and not grieving to my tenderness. Tak part of pain, fulfil it if I might, to set my silly soul in way of grace.
Thou shalt, quod he, forbear flesh, heen to pesh, Easter, to tame this course, that cursed carrion, and here I reek thee full remission.
I grant thereto, so you will give me leave to eat puddings, or lap a little blood, or heed, or feet, or paunches, let me prave, in case I fought of flesh unto my food.
Well, for great mister, I give thee leave to do it twice in the woke, for need may have no law.
God yield ye, sure.
For that text well I knaw. When this was said, the wolf his ways went, the fox on foot he fure into the flood. To fang him fish, hallily was his intent, but when he saw the Waltrin wall was woed, all stonest still into his stare he stood, and said, better that I had bidden at hame nor been a fisher in the devil's name. Now man I scrap my meat out of the sand, for I have neither boats, net nor bait. And as he was thus for fault of mate, Murnand, looking about his leven for to late, under a tree he saw a troop of gate. Then was he blieve, and in a hook him hid, and fra the gate he stole a little kid. Sin ower the hook unto the sea he hies, and took the kid by the hornets twain, and in the water, other twice or thrice, he dook at him, and till him can he saying, "Ga doon, Sir Kid, come up, Sir Salmon again." While he was dead, sin to the land him drook, and of that new made salmon ate enough. Okay. Thank you. Okay. So, knowing the story, can I ask, it's just show of nods or shakes, followable? That says, yeah, when you know what the story's about, right. The middle stage, I would say, would be to listen, to get pupils to listen to a story with the subtitles. I think I don't want to take up time doing that, so I think I'll just skip to the last stage, and I'll just read a little bit more, but this time with you looking at the Scots text. So if you can jump ahead, Scots text starting on page, wait to see, that's just what I've been reading, starting on page 6. So just to get it coming in through your ears while you're looking at the slightly unfamiliar spelling. Older Scots spelling, like modern Scots spelling actually, isn't, there's no standard. It's gradually standardising because scribes like to copy from each other. But you'll see different spellings of the same sounds. You'll notice when I'm performing that I'll sometimes be inconsistent in my pronunciation. I'll get interference from modern Scots. I'm adopting a semi-historicised pronunciation as I'm reading. There's lots of sounds, lots of things you'll see on the page that I'm not saying, where it says, for example, it looks like it says at the end of that first stanza, ein shrew. That word, it's just a shrew. That N was never pronounced unless, like it was in modern English, you have, a boat, but an apple. So there's a few things that you might notice as I'm reading. So I'll just read a couple of stanzas while you're looking at the Older Scots, and you can sort of put the two of them together. So here's our Wolf Friar again. Art thou contrite and sorry in thy sprite for thy trespass? Nah, sure, I cannot do it. Me think that hens are sae honey sweet, and lamb's flesh that new are let in blood. For to repent, my mind cannot conclude but of this thing, that I have slain so few. Well, quod the wolf, and faith thou art a shrew. Sin thou cannot forthink thy wickedness. Will thou forbear in time to come and mend? And I forbear, if I forbear. Who shall I leave, alas, having none other craft me to defend? Need causes me to steal wherever I wend. I shame to think, I cannot work you at, yet will I fain pretend to gentle stat. Henryson's very interested in social status and people's obsession with it. Wheel, quod the wolf, thou once pointest twa belonging to perfect confession, to the third part of penance let us go. Will thou tak pain for thy transgression? Sha, consider my complexion, sickly and wake, and of my nature tender. Lo, will ye see I am both lean and slender, etc., etc. Okay, so this is what I've taken to doing when I'm introducing university students to Older Scots for the first time, because I do tend to get that reaction, I'm not reading that, I can't read that. But actually, especially if you're coming to it from any knowledge of Scots, modern Scots, you realise there's much less of a gap between medieval Scots like this and modern Scots than there is between, for example, Middle English, Chaucer, and modern English. They're much closer, the vowel changes haven't happened, vowels haven't shifted nearly as much. You can see I'm wavering in my pronunciation of vowels. Is it scath or is it scaith? That's actually because those vowels did shift over the 15th century, and I can't decide where they're likely to have been for Henryson, so I slide back and forth, and I tend to default to the more familiar vowels. But this, I think, gives you a way into teaching these texts. Why Henryson's texts? You can see there's a fair bit of humour in them. The other attractive things about Henryson's versions of these Aesop's fables is each of his fable comes with a moral. I've given you the moral, the moralitas, here. Between the fox and the wolf fable and its moral, there isn't as much of a gap as there is between a few of his other fables. But one of the fun things about studying these fables is when he does open up a gap between the moral that, for example, you might know comes with it because these are famous tales, but the details that he puts in the tale makes it an awkward fit. And he kind of resets these tales in medieval Scotland, and he gives characters sort of motivations in the tale that are absent from the traditional Latin versions that then make it more difficult to kind of fit with the supposed moral that you're supposed to draw from the tale. in this, even in The Fox and the Wolf, you can see him, and the fox he's motivated by hunger. And also, you know, the wolf is asking him to do things that you're never going to get a fox to do. Are you going to stop eating chickens? Yeah. No. And that encourages you to read out to, you know, if a fox is a representative human, what does that say about human nature? You know, are you going to stop sinning? Yeah. You know, how much of a parallel there is between these two situations. And this is the kind of thing that Henryson's interested in. He was really interested in the gap between the ideal, the moral, you know, what one should do and what you're likely to do, and then why you're likely to do it. You know, he uses that phrase, need may have no law. Henryson's really interested in people who are living in need and how that is going to interfere in a fatal way with their intentions to be moral in Christian terms. Yeah, this is something that really interests Henryson. And I think there's a lot still for people to look at today and a lot still to introduce kids to today. I could only pick one of the fables, so I've picked that one to do today. So that's a sample of what you might do with some older Scots. If you're curious about some more older Scots, up on the readolderscots.scot website, we've got a few little resources starting to appear. This is another fox fable that appears in John Barbour's poem from 1375, The Fox and the Fisher. It's read by Clive Russell, and this isn't a video, so I can't play it. You're going to have to go to the website yourself. And finally, I've got another Mentimeter because I got a bit obsessed with it. So this is a final set of questions if you're willing. Still on menti.com, and your code is 72734728. If you'd be willing to answer some of those questions for me, I'd be very grateful. Thank you very much.